All right, we are live on YouTube.
Six. Six o'clock.
I have 6 o'clock as well.
All right, very good. It is 6 o'clock. We'll call the City of Monroe work session to order. Clerk, please call the roll.
Just a reminder to name the city or township you're located. Councilperson Lamore,
Here, City of Monroe.
Felder,
Here, City of Monroe.
Whitman,
Here, City of Monroe.
Icoangeli,
Present, City of Monroe.
Vining, Germany,
Excused, and there's Councilwoman Vine just zooming in.
Mayor Clark.
Present in the City of Monroe, and you can go back to Councilwoman Vine.
Okay, Clerk Treasurer Lavoy, I'm here in the City of Monroe. Councilwoman Vining,
Muted.
Present, City of Monroe.
thank you.
All right, thank you all. We have a few items for discussion this evening. Mr. Pastu, if you want to work your way through them.
Thank you, Your Honor. The first item was, at your last meeting, you received a letter from a resident on Avenue de Lafayette regarding a citation received for having a boat parked in his driveway. I did speak with the resident, but also a neighbor across the street who I believe I saw is one of the available for the call. But it was, a response to to the building department receiving a resident complaining about the boat parked in the driveway. Both of them had it very similar. They're certainly upset about the citation, questioning essentially the reasonableness of the policy, which I put in the update or in the fact sheet for the council, unequal enforcement of the code, questioning whether it's actually blight, and given other obvious blight problems in the city, is it really the highest and best use of our resources? So I included in the fact sheet just the standards for blight in which they were cited for. Essentially what it is a 48-hour period in which it can be parked, but essentially 2 consecutive days for that. And so having said that, I indicated to both, we will talk about it at our next work session, given the fact that a letter was written to council related to this policy related item. And so with that, that's my introduction to this discussion item.
Okay, we'll see if council has any thoughts on this. This is an item that's, comes up periodically. It usually comes up at the time of the season as it starts. And sometimes we know why that there's the time frame is to allow people to get it out of serviced or items in order. I have some thoughts on that as far as time frame, but I'll see if there's any council comments to start, and we'll just have some discussion. Paula.
Yes, I don't boat. I don't care for it. Don't care if other people do it. But I think that if I owned a home and I wanted to leave my boat sitting in my driveway and my grass was mowed and my house looked well kept, that I think that we should think about making this a seasonal thing. I really don't feel like my property value would be disrupted or anything else by someone else having a boat that they entertain themselves with. I have kayaks in my backyard. I don't kayak, but I keep them for my family. So I see no problem with it, really. I think it should be seasonal.
Andrew.
Thanks, sir. I think the issue here really comes to the first 2 words of that highlighted section there on Part C, where it talks about recreational equipment. You remove those first 2 words, you would never know that part of the ordinance, even intends to talk about boats. The rest of it's talking about, toys on the front lawn, furniture on the front lawn, stuff of that nature. Essentially pick up after yourself stuff. There's already the sections that say you can't park on your front lawn, but these are in the driveway. So I think that really it's those first 2 words that are causing the confusion, because it's just vague enough to mean whatever we want it to mean. And I don't really know that that's a policy that we should have. We should probably be precise about the things that we want to include and the things that we don't. So I think that's really where the crux of the issue is coming from. And if a change is needed, I think that's where it's needed. In terms of the content of what it's doing, in preventing people from having boats parked in their driveway that are on trailers, I don't know where else that you'd want them. And provided you don't have a garage or your garage is full, it essentially means that you're not allowed to store a boat at your house in the city of Monroe. You'd have to have it either at the marina or out in storage somewhere. And I don't know that that's a policy that we really want to have. Maybe Councilwoman Whitman's proposal of making it seasonal is a prudent compromise, but especially when boating is in season, and the waters are all thawed, I don't know that this is a policy worth having as long as it's not obstructing the sidewalk. I think that what these residents are doing is perfectly reasonable.
Maybe Mr. Pastu, with clarification. I know that John, you have your hand up as well, but I think there's language I recall being behind the front setback, and it's really a visual obstruction when you talk about clarity up and down the street. I mean, we're not allowing fences out front, yet we're going to have boats and RVs and stuff if this is changed. John?
Thanks, Your Honor. I'll give the council a counterpoint. I feel that any type, we could these type of regulations, you can open up a Pandora's box. By allowing an RV in the front yard and a boat, then you're going to have to allow skidoos, snowmobiles, trailers, a variety of other equipment. So we just need to be careful. The mayor is absolutely correct. A lot of communities do not allow this type of equipment in the front yard setback. Some of them don't even allow it within the front yard at all, which means you can't park these from the sidewalk to the front of the house. You have to park them on the side of the house or in the back of the house. The reason for the 2-day provision, usually RVs and boats, communities allow the owners to bring the RV and the boat on the property for 2 days to get it ready for a vacation or get it ready for the season, where they then take it to a marina and they put it in the water. I can tell you that in a lot of communities, they really have to regulate this because it starts impacting the neighborhood and it starts impacting the enjoyment of the property to your adjacent neighbors, having RVs and trailers and snowmobiles and skidoos in the front yard. The purpose why they have marinas and they have outdoor storage units is because people are buying all of their recreational equipment and they can't store it on their lots. So they need to store it on an outdoor storage facility. So, I mean, if you've been up M50 to Dundee over on, I think it's Meanwell Road, or maybe just past Meanwell, right before you get in the village, you'll see a large outdoor storage facility that's filled with campers and boats. And that's the reason. A lot of communities are not allowing them in the front yard. I mean, that's my opinion.
I'll say that, this has come up in the past, and while in this case, it doesn't appear that it's a large obstruction, but it is in the front setback, it is in the driveway. And if there's not clarification of what that means, you'll get the 35-foot RV and the boat that sits, 8 feet high or more. And it is an obstruction when you look up and down the street, or for your neighbors to look out there, sit on the front porch and not have a visual. I think one of the parts that I recall in some ordinances, I have to go back and maybe get clarity here, but there's a time frame usually in which you want to have that done. People with the recreational vehicles, I think it is reasonable they should have an opportunity to service them and bring them into operating order. Maybe today the 48 hours is a little short. I wouldn't go past a week. But I think there's also a time frame that you're looking at, expectation that it'd be done before the Memorial weekend. That's usually when people will bring them out of storage and they'll start having to do it. They need to air out their campers. They need to do those things. And I think that's reasonable. But to sit there all summer long and be moved or not be moved or used, I saw one here in the community and it's right out front, and the grass is growing up in between the tires already. So it's just not, and it's not, not all driveways are as wide as the one that we're talking about here. And sometimes they I'll just say bleed over the pavement. I think some type of ordinance is appropriate. I think it's how we should regulate it. Otherwise, we'll end up with items that we're going to be less desirable or much more less appealing in view. I think Andrew wanted to follow up, but I'll go to Brian first and I'll come back around.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Hold on, Mr. Buds has got a comment. Maybe he's going to clarify something I said, and I'll get to you, Brian. Thank you.
No problem.
Thanks, Your Honor. One thing I just wanted to say is, in the event that there's a change contemplated, the other thing that needs to be thought about is there is a provision in the zoning ordinance as well regarding this, in addition to the blight side.
Okay.
And in that zoning ordinance, it says that recreational vehicles may be parked or stored in a residential district or on a residential use property, provided that the vehicle is not parked in the required front yard or the required the street side yard area. So it kind of contemplates that same thing that we're talking about. But if there's a contemplated change, want to make sure we talk about that it's there in the zoning ordinance as well. And I know from part of the communication with at least one of the citizens, there was a question of how we define yard, and in the zoning ordinance, Front yard is the space extending the full width of the lot between any building and the front lot line measured perpendicular to the building at the closest point to the front lot line. So basically from where your house juts out farthest to that front lot line. Just thought that might be important clarification as you talk. Thank you.
Thanks, Matt, because and maybe that's part of the why where this comes up, because it falling under blight, and I understand the residents' concerns with that, I guess, notation with it, but it's also in the zoning. That's kind of where the front setback and that we're reading. Brian, why don't you go, and then we'll see this the other comments.
Yeah, thank you. Just real quickly, just tossing this out there, due to COVID, a lot of these recreational vehicles or boats in particular are having a difficult time being launched. Just wanted to put that out there. I know that there are some issues with that. So they may have an issue with getting them into the marina. I'm not sure, but I know that they did last year at this time. Just tossing that out there as part of the argument.
Thanks. I think Mr. Bud's review of what it is permissible by zoning within the properties in the city, but not in the front. So it would negate that as an item. I think most people that do have their recreational vehicles will store them off-site in the off-season. And then during season, they're either they're parked somewhere or docked or not in the front setback. And we do see it periodically. We know that. We get response from our staff when either a call comes in or whether it's you reported through the action or the My Monroe on the go or whatever it might be in the app. So, Andrew, did you have a follow-up?
I did. I suppose question for the attorney. In that case, in that definition of front yard, that would include the driveway then, wouldn't it?
That would certainly be my interpretation, yes.
Would that mean that according to this ordinance, also in Part A, it says you're not allowed to park in your front yard. Your front yard includes your driveway. You're not allowed to have a car in your driveway for more than 2 days. You're not allowed to park in your own driveway. Is that what I'm hearing?
Let me look here, because I was reading for you from the zoning ordinance about the parking of recreational vehicles. So you're asking.
I'm looking at the information that was provided in the packet. 210-2. Section 2, Part A.
Does it say yard?
It says under the section front yards, Part A, front yard shall comply with the city's zoning and ordinance requirements and shall not be used for parking purposes except as permitted in the zoning code. And
right. So I would have to go back to the
yard includes the driveway.
Front yard definitely includes the driveway. The question then is residential parking of vehicles permitted there? And I would have to give me just a second on that as you talk, and I'll come back to that as I look through the zoning ordinance. I don't believe that that's ever been enforced, and I believe there's a provision in the zoning ordinance, but I don't want to speak without having the text in front of me. So give me just a moment on that.
Okay. Well, Mr. Bud looks for that information as we chat. Other comments from council members? Any follow-ups?
I guess I would just say that I have an issue with that then, if that's the way that it's going to be interpreted. I mean, I probably have an issue with it anyway. I think I have less of an issue, I guess, with people parking their own property in front of their house as long as it's within it's in the driveway. I maybe other council members disagree. I guess I don't have much of an issue with that, as long as you're not obstructing the sidewalk.
Your Honor, Councilperson Lamore, Lamore and Ike Angeli both have their hands raised.
Okay, I'll go back. I think I just haven't put them down here. I see John, you did kind of raise your hand again, so I'll go back to you and then I have a follow-up. So
Thanks, Your Honor. My suggestion would be under the blight where it says recreational equipment, I would keep all that. I would just add a sentence to the end of that paragraph saying that recreational vehicles, I think they're referred to in part 125, Matt, of the public health code for campgrounds. DNR has a definition for what they call recreational units. And we should just exempt those from the blight and rely on the zoning code to regulate what happens in the neighborhoods. So we don't have conflicting provisions.
Yeah, if we have conflict within how it can be interpreted, I think it needs to be clarified, but I'm not supportive of putting RVs and extending from the house and 2 inches or a foot from the sidewalk. And every time you look out your house or your neighbors or down the street, that's what you see. And then if it's not driven for 2 months during the summer, it just becomes a parking lot for, yeah, it's personal, it's owned by the owner, but I'm not sure that's what I think the visual is what we're looking for with parking equipment. On the lawn, of course, we should not be parking items, and I know the police have responded to those. John, I think Matt, it might be ready, but go ahead, John.
I mean, an example that you have, I noticed that after, over the weekend when we got the manager's report, I happened to be driving down West Elm, down by Brian's block, and the last house, Brian's nodding his head, on the last house along the river, there's a big boat parked in the side yard. And then the only way I could think that they got it there was it's not a driveway. They must have jumped the curb to park next to the house. And to me, it just kind of ruins the impact of the neighborhood. That's a beautiful street down there, the neighborhood. And you got somebody parking their boat on the side of their house, not even in the driveway.
Yeah, that was an item last year, and I think it was addressed. And while they're maybe processing or preparing it for summer use and docking, it stayed longer than 2 days. And maybe that's not sufficient time. I'm open to looking at the time frame it takes to prepare and get a camper aired out, an RV and a boat prepared. If 2 days can't make it because weather changes and work and a variety of things, I'd be willing to have discussion, look at extension of a time frame, but not beyond a week. And it's got to be by a time frame in which it can be done that there aren't after Memorial Day. It's just about scheduling. Mr. Buds, did you have something further?
Your Honor, all I was going to say is that we have defined in the zoning ordinance both recreational equipment and recreational vehicles and I think that they're fairly extensive in how they're described. I'm not saying I discount Councilman Iko Angeli's suggestion of a reference, but did want to say in the zoning ordinance, we define both of those. And going back to Councilman Felder's, in the quick review of the zoning ordinance, it talks about residential off-street parking consisting of a parking strip, bay, driveway, garage, carport, or combination thereof located on the premises and intended to be served and not located in the required front yard or street side yard.
Sir, that it makes it sound like there's some issues on how we're defining front yard. If in one case it includes the driveway, and in other cases it's distinct from the driveway.
Your Honor,
John, and then I have a thought too. Go ahead.
I can tell you that from a planning perspective, the front yard includes everything from the front property line to the front of the house. That's the front yard. That includes the front yard setback plus anything up to the front of the house, including the driveway and sidewalks that lead from the public sidewalk to the house. And Matt is shaking his head, so he's obviously in agreement.
Okay.
Your Honor, I just had one other thing to add on to that.
Brian, yes, please.
Yeah, John made a good point with the boat in the side yard. It's been there for quite a while. And that would be a prime example. If you take that boat out of the side yard and you put it in their driveway, that's kind of what we're asking about. Is that acceptable? Obviously, being out in the side yard, definitely not. Is it acceptable if we take that boat and put it in their driveway?
Yeah, that's what this issue came up of is the people that have boats in their driveway got fined because they're not allowed to have recreational equipment in the
I'm
front.
just using it as an example. That's all I was stating.
Yeah, I'm okay if people have boats in their driveway as long as it doesn't obstruct the sidewalk. Other council members seem to disagree.
I think as long as it really depends on how far back on the driveway it is, because I do agree with the mayor and John that there is some kind of visual that's disturbed, if you want to call it that, by the boat extending out further or the recreational vehicle extending out further, very close to the sidewalk. So with that in perspective, I would say, how far off the sidewalk do you want it? That's kind of where I would be with it. 4, 5, 6 feet, something like that, something to give it clear visual away from that sidewalk.
I think that's why the front setback is kind of the mark. And I understand some driveways don't extend past the front setback, and they're small, the lots are smaller, or their garage, which some of these smaller boats and trailers would fit in the garage, but that's used for storage already for other items. And then it's, if it was the other way around, we wouldn't put the boat in the garage and have all the, the tables and other items and whatever's in somebody's garage out on the side, or I'm sorry, in the driveway. There's kind of a process to having these items and where they're stored and how they're used and how it fits within the neighborhood or doesn't. I think we're, then you want to talk about size. One may be smaller, but the one on that we just mentioned, that John mentioned on Elm, it's a little taller. Now you're talking, height, and then you get an RV and it's going to have height that's, way higher. I don't think we want to start getting to say up to a certain height. To me, it's either it's permissible or it's not. And I think there's some clarification needed that might make it better understandable in some wordage, how we look at this. And I think that's something worth discussing, whether it's here or reference back to a zoning item versus a blight issue. I see we have a hand up in the attendees. And it's one of the gentlemen that had a contact. I want to see if there's any other comments from the council members before we move forward. I see there's 2 comments now from both the persons that were contacted.
Would you like me to move them into?
Yeah, I guess we'll take a comment. So just as the work session, obviously it's a discussion. We're not making decisions here this evening. It's an opportunity for council to discuss it, have input, and maybe give any direction or thoughts to administration. Those that are on the line, you're welcome to, I guess, make a comment if you wish. Be mindful we have within our rules of the chamber, both at our meetings and here, that we ask that we refrain to 3 minutes so we can continue on with the meeting, the other items as well. I see Greg is first up. So Greg, just also need to identify yourself, and you're a resident of the city. We know that. So go ahead.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Greg Drudy, 410 Avenue de Lafayette, Monroe, Michigan. I'd like to try and squeeze this in my 3 minutes. First, I'd like to thank Andrew for promptly returning my call, and Mr. Pashtew for taking time out of his busy schedule to listen. And I'd also like to thank Michelle, the clerk, for responding so efficiently and processing a very small FOIA request. So, I've lived in Monroe for 30 years. And so what I did is I obeyed. The old adage, obey now, grieve later, pops into my mind. And yes, we could probably waste a lot of y'all's time debating the spirit and the intent of blight. And we could get all lawyered up over definitions, because in order to really adjudicate this, Andrew stole my thunder. In order to understand this, you actually have to look up the definitions of front yard and the definitions of recreational equipment and the 18 possible synonyms that are associated with blight. So rather than waste your time trying to do all that, I agree. Blight's a problem. Blight's a problem, but to me, my residence doesn't have cousin Eddie from Vegas Vacation or Billy Bob from West Virginia with furniture spewed all over the front yard. All facetiousness duly intended. The other comments about boats, yeah, some people have boats that are too large and they must put them in a marina. And other people have small boats that are trailerable, like mine. So, this whole issue of front yard, I get it. But here's the problem. at least part of it. First of all, process related, you can't send somebody a letter dated April 1st and then expect them to comply within 5 days when they get it on April 9th. So I think the council, among all the things y'all got to deal with, you should look at the process. Now that I got that out of the way, my boat does not restrict the sidewalk use when it's parked in my driveway. It has absolutely no impact on health, safety, sanitation, or the general welfare of the citizens, provides nothing close to disease or contamination, and isn't an eyesore. So I can actually move my boat 30 feet, literally 30 feet into my neighbor's yard and park it there for 2 days, bring it back 30 feet and play musical chairs with my boat, and I'm not in violation. To me, that seems a bit redundant. I think you need to look at the spirit and the intent of what is being the issue here. Okay, the other thing that I think that's more important, and I appreciate the mayor's comments and Mr. Councilman Michelangelo's comments, but aside from reaching this narrow definition and if that's the position this council takes, then that's the position the council takes. But the way it's going is myself and my neighbor, two of us got citations, and I'm going to make a bald-faced statement that I believe I can back up. I believe this application and this enforcement of this ordinance is absolutely inconsistent, discriminatory, and arbitrary. If the city is going to sit back and wait for a citizen's complaint, that kind of goes against me paying tax dollars to keep 2 inspectors on the payroll. Now, let me just say this.
All right, Greg, if you can finish, and then, because we have
It's
another.
not
comment.
our job to go around the city and snitch people out. But I can tell you in my neighborhood and surrounding neighborhoods, according to the FOIA request answers that I got, there's an average of 7 blighted conditions of all assortments, boats, jet skis, campers, RVs, 7 per year on average. I took a drive in maybe 3 of y'all's different districts, and I counted 51 in an hour and a half. So yes, I'm frustrated. Yes, it's inconsistently enforced. And yes, I think that the progressive negotiators, the mindset should be to find a possible way to allow boaters, as Councilman Whitman said, let us have boats during boating season. No harm can come to that.
Okay, all right, thank you, Greg.
Thank you.
Clerk, if you could move Jeffrey forward.
Yes, I'm going to do that right now. Okay.
Hey, Jeff, if you would, please. You have to unmute, sir.
Okay.
There you go.
You guys hear me?
Yeah, we got you.
Yeah.
Okay. So first of all, I'd like to apologize to Mr. Pastu with my frustration about a little fishing boat, but it's a new fishing boat that my son bought for $83,000 in his first year of his salary. We're putting items in it, such as 3 fish finders. It's his dream to be a walleye fisherman. Besides his good job following his dad's footsteps in engineering. I'm disabled, I'm old, and I get a little upset about things. So something like this. I too have a boat that's neatly stored. It doesn't enter the driveway. It's neatly stored with a nitro top on it. That's the boat made. And I just think it's ludicrous on the fact that we can't have seasonal boats in a driveway that do not hinder the walkway in the front. We have a lot of walkers. I go extra mile, even with my condition, to do the park next door, the tot lot. Mr. Drudy can tell you that. and I do my job. I've been here for almost 28 years. I love Monroe. And so the bottom line is, really wish you guys could reconsider the fact that we could have it seasonal, like walleye season, April to November, to have a period of time to have our boats home, because you can't do things in 2 days, especially when you're disabled and you're trying to help your son go and that. So that's all I have to say.
All right, thank you, Jeffrey. Thanks for,
Could I just ask his address
oh,
for the record?
sure. Jeff?
Yep, sorry, 411 Avenue de Lafayette, Monroe,
Thank you.
Michigan.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
sir. I guess I'll go back to council. I see a couple of hands I think are raised again. I'll start, John and then Andrew.
Well, I think the way that the blight ordinance is set up, section, whatever it is, 210-2C, it is really set up to prevent people from putting bicycles and toys, outdoor furniture, living room furniture, household furniture in the front yard. There is a difference, in my opinion, between recreational equipment and recreational vehicle.
Mhm.
And I really think that under the blight code, we should add to that recreational vehicles, as defined in the zoning ordinance, are exempt from a blight citation. So we just get it out of the blight. But we should fall back on the zoning code relative to the parking of recreational vehicles in residential districts, and make it uniform and make it a zoning standard, not a blight standard.
Understand. Yeah, it was, as this came forward in the discussion as blight, and I think that's really, and rightfully so, and maybe kind of sets the tone, because it's up, the equipment, or I shouldn't say equipment, the recreational vehicle is, and boats are probably well kept. Not all the case. We've seen some that aren't, but it's not necessarily a blight issue as much as a zoning. I agree. Andrew, and then I'll go to Brian after that and see if there's others with hands.
Yeah, if it helps to clarify it all, I'm still okay with disallowing any sort of the items that we've been discussing on what we would traditionally think of as a front lawn, any grassy part of the lawn, having boats or recreational equipment or couches, or just generally keeping it well picked up. That's fine. But I think that, as identified by Councilman Angeli, the first two words, if you remove the vagueness of those words, the rest of it, I have no issue with the rest of the ordinance. There is some discussion as to, what it's going to look like if we proceed from this, like with a zoning perspective, because I think I'm still a little unclear on what some definitions of the zoning ordinance are meaning when they're referring to things like front yards, and the distinction between the yard and the driveway, and then what counts as a vehicle and what doesn't, whether a boat does and an RV does, but a car doesn't, whether a truck doesn't. So if we're going to have that discussion, I'm happy to have that discussion. But if the solution just for the blight is to remove the first two words from the ordinance, and not have it relate to recreational vehicles, I'm amenable to that.
Brian?
Just wanted to clarify on the seasonal aspect of this. Is that something that we want to add to the zoning or ordinance of this, as far as boats from April to November, winter vehicles from November to April? I'm not opposed to that. I'm just wondering if that's the route you want to take, because that's kind of the slope you're going down. John, maybe you want to answer that. Go ahead.
I'll give you my comment first. And I
Go
think that having a seasonal time frame is not going to address what the issue is of having recreational vehicles, RVs, boats, whatever they may be, four-wheel trucker, four-wheelers that with mud all over them. I don't know. I could cut a whole list of things. Having those parked in the front driveways, I just don't think is appealing. But I wouldn't go for a seasonal. But that's just me. I think we have to give enough time for somebody to prepare and get their vehicle operational, their boat, their RV, their campers, whatever, to be aired out. And I think 2 days is too short. That's something I'd be agreeable to, as long as it's something done prior to the Memorial weekend and maybe a week. That's just my first thought. John?
Thanks, Your Honor. I was going to kind of go down the same path Brian was going to. We're talking about seasonality in terms of the boating season. Well, what if I'm a property owner and I have 4 snowmobiles? When am I going to get to put them out on the driveway? See, this is the Pandora's box this opens. So you can't just be selective in saying, oh, we'll allow boats during the boating season, but anybody that has an ORV or they have an off-road vehicle or they have a snowmobile, you can't park in your driveway, but you can if you're a boater. So this is what I said, this opens a Pandora's box. The way that the front yard is defined in the zoning code is very simple. It says the full width of the lot extending from the front lot line to the building measured perpendicular. And in that zone, nothing should be allowed to be parked in the driveway because that's the front yard. People can park behind it, alongside of it, as long as they have a driveway, but not in the front yard. So the issue that we get caught in with zoning regulations is that we try to address a specific problem and we open up a Pandora's box for the rest of the city. Because I am sure a boat on Avenue de Lafayette, the quality of that boat and the expense of that boat is not the same of the expense of the boat that you're going to find on the south side of the river in one of the driveways, or a trailer, or a mobile home. So I just caution the council on this issue. I don't think it should be a blight violation. I think it should be addressed in the zoning code. So I don't think the two gentlemen that have spoke really should. We should do what we can as a council, basically, because they pointed out, because of this, it pointed out the problem that we have between the blight ordinance and the zoning code. I think we should forgive their citations, and we should ask the attorney to amend the blight code to basically exclude residential vehicles from being a blight and just fall back on what's allowed right now in the zoning code. And as far as I'm concerned, I think that would satisfy a lot of the conditions.
Thanks, John. I know that some of those comments will have to go back to administration for looking at as far as the fines and items from the conversation that comes out of here. And obviously we leave that to administration at times to address. Paul, you have a follow-up, and I'll see if there's anybody else before we move on.
It doesn't really matter to me. Like I said, I'm not into boating, and you brought up some good topics. But let me tell you, I also agree with the gentleman that was on the phone. These things are already going on and nobody's catching it. I can name you at least 5 people that live in the city that have relatives that come to visit in a motorhome and park the motorhome in front of their home or beside their home. And my only suggestion is that whatever that we decide, we do a better job at being consistent. And then we won't have people upset when they get letters. They'll know that they're coming.
Okay.
That's all I had to say.
Thank you. Other council comments? Andrew.
Thank you, sir. I think that I agree with John that in this case, probably shouldn't be considered blight, and I'm very happy, forgiving the fines that were levied. Let's be careful not to take out our frustration with the building officials. If there's an issue with the policy, if there's ambiguity in the policy, that's a council problem. That's an us problem. That's ours to solve. If they're responding to an ambiguous policy inconsistently, that's probably our fault, not theirs. I thank you for addressing the issues here. Don't take it out on our staff. It's not their fault. If we're going to solve this issue through the zoning policy, I don't know whether that's going to be a discussion for another day. I'll sort of lean on administration for that, but I think that that's a discussion that we need to have before moving forward on this. I think that there's still some questions that need to be answered there, but I'm happy moving in that direction.
Very good. I see Mr. Butts has his hand up, but Mr. Past, I want to go to you and just ask if I'll just say some directions, some thoughts, and then I don't know if you want to hear from Mr. Butts first, but
I suspect Mr. Buds and I are pretty much going to say the same thing regarding the zoning code and the police
Yeah.
powers associated with the blight. But go ahead, Mr. Buds, if I may, Your Honor.
yeah,
Yeah, Your Honor. So, removing it from blight makes it a different, I'll say, enforcement type situation. So, if we're enforcing on the zoning ordinance, we're probably looking at, I'll say, less speedy response to those things, which may be okay and maybe a policy decision by the council. The other thing that I was going to say as I listened to the discussion is just that I think we would need more chance to have dialogue and consider what, when, where, how, whether we're talking dimensionally, whether we're talking time period. I don't want to be I'll say a naysayer to anything, but right. I mean, a 20-foot boat is different than a 40-foot fifth wheel camper, right, in your driveway. But if we say boats are allowed, are we saying those campers are allowed? How we're going to, and I should say how you all will weigh out as the policy decision makers, that's fine. And I'm happy to engage in that discussion. But I do think that we will have some definitional and some ideas that are going to have to be kicked around about that, so that we don't get to where, I'll say it, personal opinion probably here, every front yard has some large piece of recreational equipment, depending on the season that the homeowner likes it. I think you will probably ultimately have others that say, is that what they want in their neighborhood? But again, for all of you to decide is the policy, but I think it's going to be worth some additional discussion so that we define that in a way that council desires.
I think that's probably where we're going to go next, get some information along this line for discussion at the next opportunity. But I think Mr. Bud, your points well taken to quite honestly what Councilman Klein was saying. Where once you start, where does it end, and what's it mean, and how's it defined? We just want consistency, whether it's in the process. I agree with that comment. I think that's readily agreed by the administration. And Andrew, you're correct. It's a council item, not our inspector's item. People call and make these reports, and we should respond to those as well. And I think council members, I know I do, and others see items that know that they're not within the current, and process those through. So maybe it's not a blight issue. It's something that we somehow work together between the blight ordinance and the zoning opportunity. John.
Thanks, Mayor. Just concluding, I understand where Matt's going. There's the police power ordinance, which is blight, has a different enforcement mechanism than zoning. But I will say that zoning is much more, if I can use the term, humane, in terms of you're giving somebody a letter saying you're in violation of the zoning code. We're giving you 14 or 21 days to remedy it before we start any enforcement action. Whereas a blight citation is a ticket, and they've got to respond like right now. Yeah. So that's just a comment I have.
Yep. Thanks for clarifying, Matt, and then we'll move along.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor and Council, the one other thing that I was going to say is I think if we're going to make that change on blight, I don't necessarily have any major objection to that, though I think it would be important if we're going to anticipate allowing some of these things, that maintenance and I'll say mowing around and those things are preserved as blight issues, so that we don't have, I parked the item in my side yard and the grass has grown up to the side of it, or it's broken down, flat tire. And I know that's not what we have in this scenario, but I think we have to keep that in mind, that we would still want that to be something that could qualify as blight if it doesn't already fit in one of the other categories.
Got it.
Then there's the whole item of is it registered? Is it up to date? Does it have a license on the trailer? Right. All these items are important because otherwise it just becomes a collection. And when we see a collection in backyards and some in alleyways, even the one that was in front of a house with 3 flat tires and a expired registration plate, we should be taking action on those. So Mr. Pastu, I don't know if there's anything further.
No, I think you hit all of them. The only one I don't think that we talked about was if you're inclined to do that, the number of vehicles you will allow. more than likely. I mean, that's a major consideration as well. And as Mr. Buds indicated, you know, there's places where you do allow it, but only on hard surface. So to avoid the blight related thing. So anyways, I don't think everything else has been pretty well discussed from our end.
And there's those that don't have driveways, as myself, that
Exactly.
I park mine in the street. I don't think so.
No.
Ryan?
Yeah, just real quickly, I just want to make sure that due to the ambiguity of this, we are going to forgive those fines that were given them.
Well, we as a council can't forgive items that's not allowable by our position. It can be referred back to the administration to review and take items into consideration in concert with and consult with the city attorney. Mr. Buds?
Yeah, I think that's a fair statement. Aaron. I think the other is, and I don't want to imply more than is being stated here, but I think giving the city administration discretion on blight enforcement when it comes to recreational vehicles while this matter is being determined, I think would be an appropriate way for council to word that. That's at least my opinion, so that the city manager and others have some at least direction as far as that's concerned.
Very well.
Works for me.
Mr. Best, two, I know you have two more items, so we're running about 10 to 7.
So Your Honor, are the hands raised still somebody has a comment or?
No, I should probably put those down. We gave opportunities to speak, and we're going to follow up. I'm sure administration will follow up with both Mr. Judy and Mr. Albright on this, so they're not left hanging. So,
And Councilperson Ike Angeli is
yeah,
done.
I can put mine down.
Sorry.
Thank you. I just don't want to I want to make sure everybody gets their chance. That's all. I'm trying to help you out.
Thank
Thanks.
you, because I haven't been keeping up with that.
For the next item, if I may ask the clerk treasurer to make me a host, I just want to pull something up for council. Just a quick update on our enforcement this week that we started west of Monroe, south of 3rd Street. So
You should be set, Vince.
okay, thanks. Can you see that at this point?
Yes.
Yes.
So this was the first go round with the type of violations that were encountered. And again, this is a proactive effort on the part of our code officers. And you can see the nature of the violations. The largest for trash cans in the front or side yard, issues with brush and rubbish, motor vehicles parked on there. And if you look over here, as of last Thursday, this is the number of violations open-ended. And so there's a few of these primarily related to brush and rubbish that the city attorney is going to follow up on as far as bringing compliance with it. Still a couple of items with some furniture in the front yard and firewood, but by and large, there's been a good movement. The code officers have reached out to the property owners, and you know, we've got compliance with it. But I'll see if I could pull some pictures up. This is, you can see that on the right is a brush pile that there almost looks like a vehicle as well. Yes. So you can see that that's a follow-up enforcement, another vehicle, more brush as well. This is some of the issues. I think this is the furniture in the yard issue that we're looking at, as well as trash can in the side yard, more rubbish in the property. Again, just brush and rubbish that we'll be following up with. More brush. The ones that are starting, you know, just a handful of pictures with this, and now we start getting into some of the issues with the trash cans, and most of these are going to be the recycling bins that we have for our program. Although I don't see this one, it's somewhere here. You can see it right there where my cursor is. It's kind of hidden in the back there. Their refuse containers are smaller and less obvious. It's that bright yellow top that goes with it. And so those are the kind of issues. And I'll be honest with you, and the city attorney can talk a little bit about that. We find these a little more challenging, taking these to a court situation than we would say, for example, the brush and some of the other issues. But I did want to give you an update with how that initial sweep took place and where we are with it. And so I don't know if Mr. Buds wanted to add anything additional to that.
Your Honor and City Manager, I guess I would just say from my perspective, I've been impressed in working with both the gyms that have the job of taking care of some of these things, conducting the sweep and our other blight items. I think they have been, I'll say, conscientious and doing a good job in following up with these property owners. And I will say the compliance that they've been able to achieve, I will say, has exceeded my expectations. I thought we were going to have more difficult cases, so I want to give them, I'll say, a fair amount of kudos in that regard. And I'll echo what the city manager said. I think the trash cans represent sort of an interesting dilemma from a enforcement perspective. And I mean, I'll also say we have to keep in mind that those were recycling carts that it was a city determination to implement along with waste management. So when you may have in the past had the smaller bin, now you've got the larger cart. I'll say I think that that's a factor in where do you put those on some of these properties. And so I think Vince is correct. I'm not highly excited about those being a major enforcement item that would take us to the court system. Others, I think, clearly need some remedial work on getting things taken care of. And I know largely our enforcement team has been able to do that. And we'll follow up with those that still have some items outstanding to hopefully get those resolved short of any court action or anything like that.
Thank you. John, you have your hand up.
Yeah, thanks, Your Honor. A couple questions. One, on the trash receptacles. All the ones that I saw in the pictures all have backyards, so there's no excuse that they shouldn't have their recycling bins in the backyard. I mean, where you're going to have your recycling bin, chances are that's where you're going to have your garbage. And I know for a fact, a couple of the houses on Cass Street, I saw garbage being bags along the side of the house by the recycling bins. The other part of this is, are we doing a cross tabulation relative to these violations on which, on if the properties are owner occupied or rental occupied? Because that would be an interesting statistic to see where these citations, what side of the ledger they're falling on.
If I may, Your Honor.
Yes, please.
Yeah, we have not done that, but that's not going to be difficult either, because we do have each and every citation listed along with the address, and certainly can cross-reference it with whether it's a homestead exemption or not. Candidly, there was one that we looked at and we actually looked it up, and they go, oh, okay, it is owner occupied, because we were trying to figure out if it was a rental or not. But clear, we can add that as a part of our data, if you will, for this process.
Mm-hmm. John, follow up.
Yeah, the other thing, Your Honor, on one of the pictures I noticed, which is not allowed, is this situation or trend that we have where people are putting their grills in their front yard.
And that may be part of, I'm not going to say furniture, but yeah, I'll have to go back and look at it, but yeah,
Yeah, that is an item that is popping up. I've seen 2 or 3, and of course, we're just implementing with the fire approved items, and I think that'll be part of that follow up there as well, John. That maybe make sure that we get them in the backyard, not out in the front lawn. So, yep. Andrew, your hand is up. I'm sorry, John. Andrew.
Thank you, sir. Unfortunately, I think we found in the past that having a homestead exemption isn't always an indicator of it not being a owner occupied dwelling. We've certainly encountered issues in the past of having homesteaded properties be rented out. I know we've certainly encountered those issues in the past. We've talked about dealing with those issues, as well as rental properties that were converted to multi-unit dwellings without the necessary permits to do so as well. I was wondering if we had any mechanism to follow up on that as well.
At this point in time, we know we have not followed up on that discussion that we had of identifying those.
I know in the past year with the inspections and COVID, I know that we've not, but recently we've brought that back up. Council and administration has discussed and getting back to the rental inspections, as well as making sure that we have the inventory correct, because it doesn't take long sometimes for, if not inspected, to have issues. And I think it's an important item that we follow up on this year. And I think that's what administration has at least planned for.
Your Honor, Mr.
John?
Drury has his hand up.
I wonder if it was from now or from before. I'm not sure, but we'll see. We'll check in with them, see if there's any other comments from council here first on.
I believe it was up before.
Yeah.
Yeah, but when we were talking about the other issue.
Okay.
But I'm happy to bring him back over if you want, Your Honor.
Maybe as a comment on the blight sweep. Greg, did you have a comment on the blight sweep? And then we have 2 more items on conveyance of property as well as tree planting policy. I don't see him unmuting, so.
Oh, well, it may be on my end. Hold on
Okay.
1 second.
right.
Now let me try. All right.
Greg, did you have a comment on this?
I do, and I have a brief comment on the prior.
Well, we need to make sure we move forward because we have items here on the work session.
This will only take a second, and I would respectfully ask the attorney if I'm correct in reading 720-8 on the recreational equipment, rather than waste your time and read all the travel trailer, camper, blah, 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 blah. It closes that definitional passage saying transportation equipment, manufactured motorized home or manufactured motor bus, comma, all designed to be used as a temporary dwelling for travel, recreational, and vacation use. A small boat on a trailer is not in any way designed to be used as a temporary dwelling for travel, recreation, or vacational use for periodical and or occasional family recreational. So I think to try and help find solutions to this, I think if we read it all, I think that some of the discussion from the council can just take a look at whether these boats have cabins for dwelling. So, and on this particular topic, I wish you a lot of luck because I was emotional and angry and I drove around the city. And I'm telling you, your inspectors got their hands full. And we already have a country that's divided enough. We don't need citizens driving around saying, well, I got a citation, so I'm going to go rat out my neighbors. That's not, that to me is not how government should work. The inspectors should consistently enforce this blight ordinance, period. Thank you for listening.
All right, thanks, Greg. So I guess I look at it a little differently. I think we all have a responsibility when we see something that is not compliant. It's not snitching out. It's making your community better. It's making your neighborhood better. And maybe some people just don't know what's permissible or not. And they think that it's fine the way it is. And I think it's how we become responsible citizens and neighbors in a community. So I think when we see items, we should be reporting them because otherwise it'll just continue and fester. And I think it is a significant issue. And I think this is a year that we need to really put some efforts forward to make this. I think the first item, it's about recreational vehicles. It's not about residential. And I get we need to look at the codes and the information to make sure we get it clear so we don't have these disputes or issues. Mr. Pastu, you.
Your Honor, I'm actually going to skip over the item that we have regarding request to purchase, so we could have start our discussion regarding a tree policy, if you will. So.
All right. Yeah, we have about 20 minutes. So, Vince, any opening or just
no, other than it came up for discussion. I have Patrick Lewis, our city engineer, director of public services, on. There's a lot of data and information we have regarding, our trees based on the inventory. But I think this is more about policy development in just organizational structure. So I'm going to just leave it at that. And Mr. Lewis can pull up information if requested.
Okay, we'll see if there's any comments from council. I know we just talked about it briefly, and of course, with as was stated in our GIS, we have the trees that can be seen throughout the entire city that the public can view as well. We know there's gaps. We know there's some that well, I guess we'd like to have larger than what they are, and maybe we're looking central business district, DDA, then residential, then parks. And I think all those are factors as we look at what is we're trying to do, and maybe that's part of the discussion here is. What's the start base point on the items that whether we're purchasing or planting to make sure we keep this tree city as we're recognized as. John, you have your hand up. I know you had some thoughts on this, so go ahead.
Great segue there, Your Honor, about Tree USA.
Yep.
We've got a tremendous database that, we got that grant and we inventoried all of our trees. I think we have over 13,000. But over the years, we've removed a lot of trees. And my suggestion to council is, why not create either a tree commission or a beautification commission or committee, and then have a group of citizens that are interested in reforesting the city, work with the city administration on putting a master plan together for how we're going to reforest the town and put recommended policies together for the city council in terms of trying to get a kind of like a policy guidebook in place that addresses how we're going to plant trees and where, depending on various locations like overhead utility lines, underground utilities, the width of the terrace, a variety of numbers. But a lot of communities have tree committees, they have beautification committees. We used to be known as the Floral City. I know that there's some residents out there that probably would volunteer for this, and then we could get them to use the information that we've compiled and maybe work with Patrick and with the arborist on putting together a tree master plan to reforest the community. That's my suggestion.
So I think that's an interesting way to go about this, because we have service by our community, and whether it be committees or just people of interest, and volunteerism is the heart of a community, I believe. And I think some people have an interest in, for instance, the river, and they'll volunteer their time there and provide information and work with Cody and Mr. Leroy. We have still working on getting our trail committee together. I think we have some interested parties there. We have to set a structure up for that. This might be a little easier in setting a structure up. You always want to make sure you give the direction to a group of residents so they know what it is that's kind of being asked of them, and maybe willing to do some of the legwork to assist the staff to implement a policy. Something we might get some input from tonight, or maybe at a council meeting for some discussion. Other thoughts from council members on maybe thoughts on going about this, or thoughts on the inventory or plantings? John, go ahead.
Your Honor, I'm going to ask Andrew the question because he's the liaison to Cody. Is this something that Cody is part of your overall umbrella?
So I sort of see, and I've expressed to them that I see Cody as sort of the advisory committee to council on all things environmental. I can have them look at it, but I'm very supportive of what you've laid out in terms of having interested parties come forward in wanting to have a say about how we continue to beautify the city of Monroe. I really like that. So I'll pitch it to them the next meeting. I know I have some items on the agenda that I want looked at by them already, but I'll certainly add it to the agenda. We can talk about it, and I can come back with an opinion as a liaison. Most of their work really deals with water.
Yeah, that's what I
I
figured.
know that we talk about the environment broadly, but really the interest of the Cody is in water, and very specifically the river and the AOC.
Okay.
John, I think there's some partnerships also that, could be contributors and support. Last fall, ITC had a grant and planted those trees on East Elm from the battlefield all the way to the entrance to the Heritage Trail. And I know we'll monitor those to see that they all take or not, but those are items come back. But they were very appreciative of wanting to come down and help. We had many volunteers that were there.
Oh, we've got some pretty good garden clubs in the community too. So I think there's a volunteer base out there that has some expertise. My thought was that we've got this tremendous database.
Yeah.
And it would be interesting to have some interested citizens work with Patrick and more so the arborist on coming up with a consolidated plan that we could filter in eventually into the capital improvements program. So every year we have just like a street reconstruction project, we have a reforestation project that may involve one or two streets.
Mm-hmm.
And we have them prioritized and we work our way around the community.
I think some of that was done with Harrison because we knew we had to take some trees out, and there was a dedicated movement or plan for what trees got put back in. But but doing that on many projects, I think, is important. And then we have some aged trees as well. They're very, very large, but we know they're not going to make another 5 years. They're just pretty massive. Other thoughts from council members?
I really like what John laid out.
Yeah.
I don't know the availability of the arborist. I think I made a joke to Vince while I was in his office one time that there could be no additional trimmings that happen in the city of Monroe. I think Tony Abbott's still going to have plenty to do until he retires.
Yeah.
No doubt about that.
Yeah, there is. All
Well,
right.
just to make sure and clarify, there'll be a discussion with the Commission on the Environment about this, a report back, and then we can, depending on that, start putting the structure in place for either through Cody or a separate and independent commission or committee.
Mm-hmm. Maybe even through the Commission on the Environment, Andrew, if they're at least willing to have some input or oversight, there may be residents that'll want to join for that purpose, not necessarily as a Cody member, but as a kind of a subcommittee that they'd want to be a participant on. It gives that opportunity for Cody, because I know they've been able to find some revenues and support funding on projects. There might be things that we can roll into there, and then have this other group subcommittee that might want to take that on and come back to Cody and present it back through that way too.
We certainly do have connections with other organizations that are interested in the area in that sort of environmental work. Also connected to the Cody is the Public Advisory Council. We're promoting associate members, and anyone can be an associate member. I don't even think they need to be a resident of the city of Monroe. If you're interested and want to help your community environmentally, come out to a Cody meeting. Those meetings are listed publicly, and you can be an associate member of the PAC. We'd love to have you. So
That'd be great. Thanks.
that
That's a
would
good point.
opportunity for them to really be engaged and take on a project.
Excellent. Mr. Best, do anything further on this?
Not on this item.
Okay.
I'm gonna ask Mr. Cochran, you think we got enough time to work on the next one?
I think so. Yeah,
Okay.
we can be pretty brief. Want me to go ahead?
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, please do.
Yep. So, Honorable Mayor, City Council, Mark Cochran, Assistant to the City Manager and Economic Development Director. We did have 3 requests made recently to take ownership of 3 city-owned lots. I will say we presented 3, but the one at 402 Elmira, we've had further conversations with the interested party. And I would say we need to have some more further discussions with them. So I don't think we're quite ready tonight to have this up for consideration and feedback. So if we could table or pull that one and table it for a future meeting, that'd be appreciated. But the other 2 are vacant city-owned lots as referenced. I can pull my map up here. The first is 1118 East 6th Street. The requesting property owner is the owner of 1122 East 6th Street, and his mother lives at 1112 East 6th. And so they would like to take ownership of that lot to pretty much just expand their yard. They have no plans to build on it or do anything further. And much is the same case with the other property that's been presented at 635 Winchester. Again, no plans to construct anything or build any outbuildings at the time. The gentleman at 635 Winchester did mention that he might possibly build a garage in the future, but no immediate plans. So as with past practices, we're bringing these two interested parties to you for consideration and feedback this evening.
Thanks, Mark. I'll see if there's any questions. I had an opportunity to speak with Mark and the manager on these requests, and I know that we as a council talked about our inventory of vacant lots that are city owned, and first, what's the potential for redevelopment if we put together a package of a multitude of properties that might bring a developer in that we could inspire some home building is one item. And so I think that's just a backdrop of kind of going through and assessing whether these may not be the ones. And so maybe we do consider some type of conveyance on this. I think there's just a couple items I think that I know the administration looks at and we should make sure. Andrew's kind of ties what you said before, homestead. What is the ownership of the person that's making the request? Is it a homestead property or is it a secondary property? And I'm not inclined to want to expand a rental property for an extra lot. While it might make an appearance and make better, but that just means it's not an ownership item. And then, we should be checking to make sure that all properties are up to date in taxes and any other items to make sure, if they're default, why would we consider expanding to just have potentially more default? And maybe there's ways we can help them get there and talk that through. And I know the treasurer's office has those, the records, and we have them on GIS, but and then the last thing is my thought is if somebody's asking, we should ensure that the property is deeded with the residential property as opposed to being a standalone separate vacant lot. It should be co-joined. And I think that's administration looks at that as well, because later on, if they sell and then you have this lot, well, they own a lot and then they're not here. And then we're just right back to where we were before, trying to track down a potential, grass cutting or blight or item because it's just vacant lot. I think combining it makes it is something we should be ensuring that that's what the intention is as well as a standalone lot. That's just my thoughts. I don't know if council has other thoughts about this. I don't have a problem with the two properties that were talked about. The one's quite large. I think it could make not just the frontage, but the depth. The other one is between the two, I'll say related persons, but I understand they moved in, so it is a home owned property. So other thoughts? Yes, Kelly.
Yes, Your Honor. I just wanted to say I had spoke with the gentleman who owns the property at 1122 East 6th Street.
Mm-hmm.
I know his mother has owned that property at 1112 for many, many years. And I'm not sure how recent he purchased the other property, but I know he's basically maintained that lot in between the two properties for a long time, several years. So I don't know about the Winchester property, but I know that the E6 properties, those are homesteads.
Thanks, Kelly.
Owner occupied.
Yeah, I agree. And I think being a recent owner, I think it tells me they have plans to be a homestead. And then and I understand the value then of that lot and making their lot and larger. And it does have a better resale in the long run too. John?
He also stated that, I'm sorry, Your Honor.
Oh, sorry. Well,
Excuse me,
Kelly,
John. He also stated that, he had spoken with Mark and that he like to talk to the city about maybe building, if that's something that we're looking at going towards in the future. So he's open for further conversation.
All right, John?
And which address was that, Kelly? Was that the 6th Street?
Yes, the East 6th Street.
In terms of building what, a garage?
Well, I wasn't there for the conversation between Mr. Amati and Mark, but he said that Mark mentioned that, we might be wanting to build homes in the area as part of our development. And he said that's something he's might be interested in talking to the city about. I don't know how, he would tie in with that, but I know we're in the middle of this sub area plan. And so he just stated that he was open to discuss those, something like that. I kind of assumed he talked about building a property and maybe using it for a rental housing. And that's an assumption that I made.
Sure. Okay. John, you have further?
Well, the one at 14 or 1118 that's a conforming lot, I believe, in terms of zoning.
Right.
Yes,
And,
it is.
So I looked at that and my initial reaction was, hey, is that a buildable lot? Is that one of the ones that we want to put out for a developer or maybe a property owner to put a proposal in on building a house? Is it a parcel that we want to make available to Habitat of Monroe County to see if that's since it's a buildable lot, if they have any interest in building a dwelling on the property. The other parcel on Winchester Street, those lots there are so small. I think by selling it to one of the adjacent property owners, and as the mayor said, joining those two properties together, we'd end up with at least one larger lot on that street.
Mhm. Mark, did you have follow-up or?
Yeah, I was just going to mention this week, Vince and myself and Terry Davis sat down to begin looking at every city-owned lot across the city and looking at the future plans. And so it's going to be a little bit of a bigger project than what we thought of. They range for various sizes and various uses right now, various deed restrictions. And so what we're going to do is take a look parcel by parcel that's owned by the city, determine whether it's conforming or non-conforming, and then provide some recommendations moving forward with those. The conversations that I had with the property owner on East 6 is that what we've done historically is if it's a non-conforming lot, we would split it up and offer half to each adjoining property owner. But if they're conforming and buildable, then we've been looking at holding on to them for future redevelopment purposes, and whether that's putting an RFP out or working with a developer or considering some sort of infill residential development purposes. That's what I indicated to Mr. Amati on East 6th Street, that we're beginning to take a deeper dive and a look at across the whole city.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks for the update, because I think that's where council is as we're moving forward. I think I appreciate that. It'd be interesting to see the data as it comes out, conforming, non-conforming, and then can we package something together in kind of bundles? So
yeah, because certainly the conforming lots, the goal is to put them back into active use and back on the tax rolls, as well as increase new residential opportunities in the city if we can.
correct. Home ownership would be great.
Agreed.
Well, if there's no other comments on this, Mr. Pasteur and Clerk Treasurer, about 10 minutes to go. So if there's nothing further, Vince, if you have something you want to close with?
Nothing to add, Your Honor.
Okay, I'll see if Clerk LaVoy has anything before in preparation.
I have nothing and I don't see any hands raised, so I think we're all set.
Yep. I just saw Brian's go up, so we'll go to Brian and then we'll move forward. Brian.
Yeah, just regarding, just real quickly, the bird rides, the scooters.
Yeah.
And I'm going to want some more clarification when we discuss that during council. And I'm assuming we're going to have time to do that during the council action prior to voting on this.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that Mr. Cochran's going to do a presentation or information. I know that some calls come in. I think just really about clarifying what that is and how it's going to operate and what the responsibilities are. Those were a couple of short messages I received. And I think Mr. Cochran has the response to that. And if others you may have, Brian, okay?
Sure. Yeah, there's just a lot of residents that have been asking questions about that and had concerns. That's all.
Yep. If there's no other comments, Okay, I'm just going to, it doesn't take a motion, so I'll just close the work session at this time. And we have about 9 minutes, mindful of your audio and your video if you wish. Thank you. Clerk?
I'm ready.
Okay, thank you. I see that it is 7:30. So at this time, call the city council meeting to order. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Lamore,
Present, City of Monroe.
Felder,
Present in the city of Monroe.
Whitman,
Present, City of Monroe.
Angeli,
Present, City of Monroe.
Vining,
Muted, please. That's okay.
Present, City of Monroe.
Germaine,
Excused.
Mayor Clark,
I'm present in the city of Monroe.
And Clerk Treasurer Lavoy, I'm president in the city of Monroe. We have faith and hope in each other and our democratic form of government. We ask for your guidance in the decisions that are made here this evening. We ask you to help us work together for the welfare of this community and all of its residents.
Thank you. Now for the Pledge of Allegiance, I ask you please join me at this time. I pledge allegiance to
Allegiance
To the
to the
flag
the flag of the
of
United States of America and to the republic
for which
for
it
which it
stands,
stands,
one
one
nation,
nation, under
under
God,
God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
with
with
liberty
liberty and justice
and
for all.
justice for all.
Thank you. Clerk, next item, please.
The next item are any amendments to the agenda.
Mr. Pastu, any items for the adjustments on the agenda?
I have nothing, Your Honor. Thank you.
Any comments from council? I see none. Clerk, next item, please.
The next item are citizen comments not related to an agenda item, and I do have two letters that I was asked to read into the record that were also forwarded to council earlier today.
Okay, if you'd read the letters first, then we'll see if there's any of those that are present this evening wish to have comments at the beginning of the meeting.
The first is from Ji Yoon Lee of Chicago, Illinois, to whom it may concern. As a U.S. citizen and supporter of Native American issues, I'm writing to request that the Custer statue be removed from downtown Monroe. George Armstrong Custer committed acts of violence that do not merit him a place of honor or commemoration. This is not the example that children should follow or that Monroe residents need to be reminded of on a daily basis. The fact the statue is used to rally people around white supremacy is an indication that it should be taken down. I request this letter be read aloud at Monroe City Council meeting during citizen comment period. Thank you for your consideration. Ji Yoon Lee, Chicago, Illinois.
Okay.
And then the next one is, one moment. The next one is from Owen Goslin, Sheboygan, Michigan. My name is Owen Goslin and I'm a resident of Sheboygan, Michigan. I'm joining with other concerned citizens in Monroe and around the state to ask that you remove the George Custer statue in your city. The continuing presence of the statue is hurtful to my Indigenous friends and only serves to create division between our communities. I speak as a white person whose family has a personal connection to General Custer and Battle of Little Bighorn. My ancestor, Adolf Goslin, immigrated from Prussia to the United States after the Civil War and entered service with the U.S. Army as a surveyor in the prairies. After Custer's defeat on the battlefield, my ancestor's regiment was the one sent to recover the bodies of the fallen U.S. servicemen. My ancestor wrote a detailed eyewitness account of the devastation, which was published in German newspapers around the country. Later that same year, 1876, my ancestor received U.S. citizenship on the basis of his military service. That act of citizenship allowed my family to thrive, and we now have lived in Michigan for 5 generations on land taken from the indigenous Potawatomi and the Anishinaabe peoples. At the same time, Indigenous Americans did not receive citizenship until an act of Congress in 1924. And because voting laws are governed at the state level, some states did not grant their indigenous communities the right to vote until 57. My point in sharing my family history with you is this: we are not proud of our connection to George Custer. Custer represents the worst elements of our country and our shameful treatment of Indigenous Americans. Although we cannot change history, we can change the lessons that we draw from that history, and we can begin the work of repair. I urge that you remove the statue so we can send a clear signal that his life and behavior is not worthy of either celebration or emulation. Thank you for your consideration. Owen Goslin, Sheboygan, Michigan. And that's all I have, Your Honor.
Thank you, Clerk. So at this time, is there any comments, citizens' comments not related to an agenda item? If there's any comments, please be mindful of the rules of the chamber of 3 minutes, but also identify yourself and your jurisdiction of residence.
I see no hands raised, Your Honor.
I see no hands. Okay, next item, please.
The next item would be the first item under council action, item 3138, addendum to professional services agreement with MKSK Lazy Boy Site redevelopment.
Thank you. Mr. Pastu.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'm going to have Mr. Cochran provide a brief introduction to this item.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vince. Honorable Mayor, City Council, Mark Cochran, Assistant to the City Manager and Economic Development Director. As you know, we've been working with MKSK on the planning for the overall redevelopment of the former Lazy Boy headquarters site. We've spent quite some time engaged with them after the sub-area plan and after securing a developer for the site and developing the PUD standards as well as drafting the PUD agreement. And also working on some infrastructure design for the site, such as stormwater detention. But there's still quite a bit of work yet to be done. As you'll see in the proposed scope of work, what we need to continue to do is we're very close to having the Eagle permit for the Mason Run redesign, as well as the drain crossings submitted to the state with a wetland mitigation plan. In accordance with the sub-area plan, developing the final site standards for the Mason Run space, the green space as indicated in the sub-area plan. Also working to finalize the PUD agreement with City Attorney Matt Buds and the developer. And then furthering the next phase of infrastructure work to be the extension of Holiday Drive to Huber, and then Huber across the Mason Run drain north to Greenfield Avenue, eventually to Stewart Road. And so we've also got some funding included in the proposal to do site plan reviews to make sure that they're in line with the agreed upon PUD standards and PUD agreement. I think right now we've got 6 possible commercial tenants along North Telegraph Road that will be submitting site plans in the near future. That need to be reviewed against the PUD standards that we'll work with MKSK on, as well as developing. The city had committed to working on along the frontage along North Telegraph Road, the entryway feature, including landscaping and naming the overall development and branding the redevelopment of the site, working with MKSK on that. And so the addendum that's up for consideration tonight is to continue the work that we've all been working very diligently on this very complicated as well as fluid redevelopment.
Thank you, Mr. Cochran. I'll see if there's any questions from council and then move forward toward that. And then if there's any motion, Council Michelangeli, and then I'll go to Councilman Felder.
Your Honor, thank you. Question for Mr. Sell. I'm assuming the $100,600 professional fee is included in the brownfield bond?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This is Ed Sells, Assistant City Manager, Finance Director. About $72,000 of it is included in the brownfield bond. There's 2 remaining amounts. The PUD cost would be picked up by the city actually, and there's a cost related to Huber Avenue that would be, because it's infrastructure, would be picked up by the developer. So the rest of it after that is then would be covered under the brownfield bond.
Okay, my next question is to the city manager or Mark. will this contract with MKSK get us over the hump? So we've pretty much got all the design stuff nailed down on this project.
Vince?
As Mr. Cochran mentioned, at this point in time, we're ready for the submittal with Eagle related to the drain and stormwater management of the site based on the numerous discussions with the developer. So I think this will get us there. Basically, at this point in time, we're looking at surface related items regarding some details with, if you will, raised intersection at Huber and Holiday, as well as landscaping, the habitat, if you will, for the drain, that type of thing. So I think this will get us there. At this point, the remaining items, I believe, will likely be site development that would obviously be the responsibility of the developer. Mark, did I miss anything?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, because my observation based on the proposal is part of the work that they're going to do is identifying some of the surface elements that need to be installed relative to like site furnishings, the lighting, all this other stuff. So I'm assuming once that is done, then that is transferable to other phases and we don't have to go through another design study.
I agree. I mean, we've already got the design standards for the rest of the site development. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I believe the rest of it will just be implementation.
Your Honor, I'll move to approve the addendum for the professional service agreement for MKSK in the amount of not to exceed $100,600 and authorize the administration to execute the agreement or the addendum to the original contract.
I'll second, but I want Andrew to have his voice in this as well. He has his hand raised.
Oh, sorry about that, Andrew.
That's okay. We have a motion, Councilman Michelangelo, supported by Councilman Lamore, and I wanted to get back to Councilman Felder as well. Comments or thoughts?
I was just wondering about the stormwater management and whether that, as well as the other aspects of the study, were included in the initial scope of work. And then the intention then I want to confirm is that Huber's getting opened up, Bentley is not. Because that's going to impact the priority both of the road reconstruction for those residents at the end of the drive, as well as things like snow removal.
Yeah, it's a good review. Thanks, Councilman. Mark, if you would.
Yeah, I think to cover the first issue related to stormwater, everything in the first phase has been just about completed related to stormwater detention. The only thing that it doesn't cover is there's going to be likely 2 development parcels north of Mason Run Drain, south of Greenfield Avenue, that aren't part of the stormwater detention that's being built east of Huber Drive. But those are 2 relatively smaller lots that will likely be just stormwater detention management on site. We really overbuilt the stormwater detention as well to help account for that. So stormwater has been fulfilled in the first phase. And yes, there is no plan to extend Bentley Drive through the site, only Huber Drive.
Okay, thank you.
Councilman Michelangelo, you had a follow-up?
Yeah, just a clarification to Mark. But on Bentley, there will be a pedestrian connection.
Right.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
Yeah, correct. Okay, so there's a motion by Councilman Michelangelo, supported by Councilman Lamore, item 3138, the addendum from MKSK on the Lazy Boy site redevelopment. There's no further questions. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Lamore,
Yes.
Felder,
Yes.
Whitman,
Yes.
Michelangelo,
Yes.
Vining,
Yes.
Mayor Clark.
Yes. Next item, please.
The next item is item 3141, Memorandum of Understanding with Bird Rides Incorporated.
Mr. Cochran, or I'm sorry, Mr. Pestu.
Yeah, no, you're right.
Mr. Cochran's going to be having some comments, so well, thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you. So after we presented the original proposal we received from Bird a couple months ago to bring the electronic or motorized scooter service to the city, We did go through with a list of questions that we posed to them about various scenarios and how they would be addressed. So I'm going to go through just a few of them, and certainly if you have further questions, I will do my best to answer them with the knowledge that I have. So in order to utilize the Bird scooters, you do have to be over the age of 18. When I ask them how they verify that, what happens is when a user signs up for an account using the app, they have to upload some sort of identification or verification that shows their date of birth as well as a photo. So something like a driver's license or a state ID or something similar. And then every time a user goes to utilize the Bird service, they do a facial recognition. So you have to use the camera on your phone, it scans your face, and then it double checks it against the identification that they have on file to make sure that it's the correct person and someone over the age of 18 using the scooter service. In terms of the memorandum of understanding, we do have laid out that they are to be operated within state law. There is some state laws regarding the use of electronic scooters that Matt Buds did insert that language and that Bird accepted. Further, for the city's purposes, we do intend to regulate them much the same as we do bicycles in the city of Monroe. So if you can't ride a bike, say somewhere like downtown sidewalks, you wouldn't be allowed to operate the scooter on the downtown sidewalks. And so we'll go through that process with the implementation. The other thing is each scooter is equipped with GPS. And so one of the concerns that we worked through with the police department was how frequently police reports may be filed. And I'm sure if any of you have gotten questions, it's much the same as I've gotten, is what if it gets thrown in the river? That's been a top concern, or when they're left scattered all across the city. So every night, the employee that works for Bird will go out across the city, locate all the scooters and collect them each evening, charge them up, and then redeploy them the next day. The way that it works is there will be 25 Bird nests across the city where you can pick up the scooter, and you're also expected to return the scooter to that location. And that's all directed by the user's app on their phone. So say I pick one up at City Hall, and I want to go to St. Mary's Park, there would be, we would work to set where the Bird nests are across the city. If I decide to dump it somewhere along the way in the middle of a sidewalk on downtown, they know that I was the last person to use it, and they also know where to trace the scooter. And so if I don't abide by the rules, I will get a notification on my phone, sort of a first offense, second offense, third strike, you're out. The first would be a warning. The Bird employee would go out and retrieve the scooter. If I do it again, I may get penalized somehow on the app, or if I do it a third time, I'll be banned from using the scooters altogether. So if a scooter is lost, damaged, or stolen, they take care of that by themselves as a company. They don't file a police report every time one is damaged, or if one is missing. And of course, if one is missing, they know where it is because of the GPS unit. Police involvement would really be limited to if they know that someone is habitually stealing the scooters, and they know that there's probably multiple scooters located at one location, then they would seek police assistance to retrieve those and rectify the situation. And so I think that covers most of the concerns that were raised by city department heads and city staff, but certainly I know there's two hands now, and I'll try and answer those.
Sure. Councilman Lamore.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mark, just a quick question regarding the interaction with street traffic. What kind of problems do you foresee with that? Obviously, they're not allowed on the sidewalks downtown, same as bikes. Next question onto that would be enforcement. Is this something that the police are going to enforce as far as if they are not abiding by the rules, riding on the sidewalk, bad interaction with the traffic, those types of things. So those are kind of my questions there.
Yep, it would be enforced and looked at just the same as bicycles are. So interacting with traffic. Again, we would set the parameters. We're not allowed to operate the scooters on streets that have, well, and this is the Bird policy, not ours. over 35 miles an hour. So you wouldn't see them going down like North Telegraph Road. So they would be riding on the side of the street, much the same as bicyclists are. If there's folks who are caught riding them on the downtown sidewalks, they would be violating the city ordinance and certainly dealt with much the same as if somebody was skateboarding or riding a bicycle on the sidewalk. And we would also have point of contact and communication, and police department would be provided that with the Bird scooter company. So if we do have a problem with someone riding them habitually where they're not supposed to be, we can report that to Bird as well, and they can bar somebody from using them in the future if they're continuing to abuse ordinances and policies.
Just real quickly, how fast do those things go?
I don't know the answer to that, but that is a good question.
Okay, thank you.
Councilman Felder.
Thank you, Your Honor. Two questions. First of all, one for the police chief. These are operational until 4 a.m. Obviously, in a downtown setting, there's the possibility that they could be used to drive yourself home on a scooter instead of in a car after a trip to the bar, or drive yourself back to a parking lot or a friend's house or whatever. Operating a scooter while under the influence of substances, alcohol or otherwise, that's, I'm assuming, not permitted. What are the rules engaging that?
Chief McCormick, I see you joined us.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Charles McCormick, Chief of Police. They are a motorized vehicle, so one would be subjected to any rules and laws that would govern such. You are operating a motor vehicle on a roadway, so
okay,
certainly couldn't be intoxicated and driving one. But I think a lot of that has played into Bird's review of the history of the accidents and such, is why they build in almost a curfew to collect them in the evenings.
Okay.
Thanks, Chief.
If I may, for clarification, they're operable until midnight.
Right.
They become,
oh yes,
they get set out at 4 a.m. and then they're
4 a.m. You're absolutely correct. I misread. And then second of all, I think you covered this a little bit, Mark. Let's say I want to pick up a scooter, drive to a store, drop the scooter outside the store, run in, get something, come back out, and then return it instead of driving it to one of the sites. Let's say that the store's not next to a site. Is that permissible? Or because I didn't return it to a one of the designated areas, am I in violation? How's that work?
Yeah, they're supposed to be returned to the designated areas across the city.
So even though I have the intention of doing, I'm not allowed to just park it, run in, get something, come back out on the same scooter that's waiting for me that I left there, and then return it. I have to always go back to.
No, if you're just running into the store and getting something, but again, keep in mind that your time is ticking and you're charged by the minute. So
time-based, mileage-based thing.
Yeah, until you end your stop, you keep getting charged.
Understand. Okay.
And if you drop it somewhere and it's not one of those bird's nests, you can't end your ride until you do. So you just keep getting charged.
All right. Understand. So the renter has an incentive then to to return it where it needs to go. Okay.
Starts hitting the pocketbook. Yep.
Yeah, exactly. Good questions. Any other questions from council members? I'm sorry. See no other questions. This item's up for council action.
Your Honor, I'll make a motion to approve the memorandum of understanding with Bird Rides LLC for deployment and operation of electronic scooters in the city of Monroe, and authorize the city administration to sign the necessary documents.
Second.
Motion by Councilman Michelangelo, supported by Councilman Felder on item 3141, the memorandum of understanding with Bird Rides Inc. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Lamore,
Yes.
Felder,
Yes.
Whitman,
Yes.
Angeli,
Yes.
Vining,
Yes.
Mayor Clark.
Yes. Next item, please.
The next item is item 3140, consideration to amend downtown development and tax increment financing plan.
Thank you, Mr. Pastu, and I know that I think Ms. Knowles is on as well, but Mr. Pastu.
Thank you, Your Honor. Council, our city administration's requesting council to adopt a resolution to amend the Downtown Development Authority's development and tax increment financing plan. The significant elements of it, the deletion of 3 areas that are not part of the core downtown area and no longer contributing to the tax increment capture. Also, that we're looking to add 3 parcels, most notably the parcel being the former fire station on Scott Street. The council did hold a public hearing in mid-March regarding that. We did have a opportunity to meet with all of the taxing entities. As of this date, we did not receive any comments since then related to the development and tax increment plan. And then also, I think there was commented to ask that we add the district map to that, which is part of the attached document we're asking council to approve tonight.
Well, any questions or comments from council for administration on this item? Council Michelangelo.
Yes, thanks, Your Honor. The one thing that I guess I missed it on the first time I reviewed the draft is that the table 2, the estimated project cost on page 12, balances out with the forecast on the tax increment revenues, which I have never seen before. That the estimated project costs should actually be what the DDA feels the total cost of the project is, regardless if this exceeds the tax increment revenues. Because the way that it's set up is you have like a lot of projects that are costing $560,000. Then you have other projects that are costing $280,000, which is half of that. It adds up to 5.6 million. And then the TIF revenue forecast is approximately 5.6 million. This capping these projects at this amount limits the amount of money that could go into those projects with tax increment revenues. Or, for example, if we wanted to put more money into the Riverfront Riverwalk, it's based on the development project cost, it's capped at 560. We may want to put more money in that. So the projected costs should be like, for example, we've had master plan done for the updating the Riverwalk. The total cost of that should be in the estimated cost. Even though we're going to have less tax increment revenues, the development costs in the downtown should be exactly what those projects are going to cost, if not more. Otherwise, we're going to be in a position where, let's say we needed more money on land acquisition and we're capped at 560. Does the administration see where I'm going with this?
Well, I understand it, but these are estimated costs. I think the fact that the projects are identified, historically, I've always felt were the key to establishing that. I'm not sure if Ms. Knoll has anything he wants to add to it.
Yeah, hi, good evening, everyone. Annette Knowles, Downtown Economic Development Coordinator. I prepared that list of potential projects with the cost estimates, and the approach I used was just to be very generalized and provide estimates as opposed to finite numbers. At this point, I don't think we have enough information about each project to have a specified amount. Secondly, I would believe that if the cost of a project would exceed what's permitted or what was listed in the table, that the DDA could simply amend the plan yet again. So without having as much detailed information about each of these projects, we put in what I'll call a best guess scenario.
That's, Your Honor, that's kind of where I was going with it. Then we're going to be in a situation a couple of years down the road of amending and restated the plan because we didn't put enough money into public amenities. If it's a best guess, then I would jack some of these numbers up, to $1 million, $1.5 million, because that gives us a lot more latitude and we don't have to come back a couple of years from now and amend the plan. I guess the point is these numbers should always be higher than the anticipated tax increment revenues.
So the resolution that the council can make this evening, you are able to approve the plan as presented. You are able to disapprove or not approve the plan, or you're able to approve the plan with modifications. So if there are modifications that the council would like to make, we are happy to make those adjustments. We just need to take note of them when you pass your resolution.
So Councilman Mikelange, I'll have a question just to follow up to that. So looking at this estimated project costs and knowing that it's not I just say a definite cost, but it's anticipation of what cost could be over the next whatever years. The total amount is, if it's stayed in the way this is on the chart that I see here, does it mean that a line item can't be overspent when the total might come from another line? So you're saying it's kind of restrictive in that fashion?
Correct.
Okay, so your thought is trying to get a total amount that's, if there's a particular area that you anticipate could easily run over what that might be, or is that something you want to have further analysis on?
Your Honor, I don't want to overcomplicate it. Maybe the way to do this as an amendment would be to insert in table 2 under administration would be a line item that would be called design and construction contingency. And then add, and I'm just throwing a number out because this table does not, like Annette said, this is a best guess estimate, but you want this number to be always higher than your tax increment revenue forecast. So I would just jack that up. I'd put a contingency for design and construction in there of like $3 million. So your total is $8,600,000. And then underneath the table, put a qualifier in there saying that depending on the final design and construction assessment for each of these projects, the specific project may be higher, and those funds would come out of the contingency line item.
I understand. Right. So it's making sure we have the revenue that's shown for what we anticipate it could be, having it under the administration. You said a design and construction, an amount that for just as you stated could be utilized for not unanticipated, and then down below in the narrative, make a specific reference that these funds would be used to, I'll just say, cover projects that come up that exceed the estimated costs within the table 2.
Sure, because take it for example, let's say we don't do the pedestrian walkways until 10 years from now. We're estimating at 560, but 10 years from now, with the cost of inflation, that could be $750,000. So you need to have a narrative in there saying that these numbers can go up based on construction cost at the time that they're being bid, and then you got to have money there to pay for them. So we probably need to stick another line item in there. Vince, do you see where I'm going with this?
Yeah, I do. And basically I was gonna, move down to the resolution itself and just trying to think how to craft the motion for that. Let me get down there far enough. And
okay.
But essentially, I'm going to ask council to adopt the attached resolution to adopt the development and tax increment financing plan with the amendment to include on table 2 that an additional $3 million related to project design and contingencies, and then a little footnote below the table that the contingency and design could be used for project costs that exceed the amount identified by the line item.
Your Honor, I'll make that motion that we move to approve the resolution to amend the Downtown Development Authority Development Plan and Tax Increment Financing Plan with the amendment, the revision, that on table 2, we add a line item referred to as design and construction cost contingency with an amount of $3 million, and a narrative that says that depending at the time of construction and the final scope of the construction project, the contingency fund can be used to supplement funding in table 2.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, there's a motion by Councilman Mikelange, supported by Councilman Felder on item 3140, consideration to amend the Downtown Development Authority Development and Tax Increment Financing Plan. Any other questions or comments from council? I think it was pretty clear on the discussion, but also the motion. And I'll add, Councilman, I see where we have in here the land acquisition. It's not that we want to be purchasing landowners to the DDA, but there's that development opportunity that may come up. And this could be one project and then the second one come behind it that's equally with maybe a developer in mind that wants to come in after we've done some necessary environmental or other work, that we would be kind of hamstrung without that opportunity. So I think it's, I understand the motion and the amendment. Councilman Moore, you have your hand up for a comment?
Yeah, I just want to clarify, just the $3 million contingency is basically just like you said, Mayor, for another project that may come about after we've decided that we want to do this project. So it just kind of covers our bases, so to speak, so that we're not shortchanging one or another project in the future.
Absolutely. That's the way I understand it, because you could have by these estimated costs on a line item, if that's met, you can't exceed, and then you might miss an opportunity that would be greatly beneficial in any of these areas. So I think it puts that as, just as the councilman said, design, construction, and contingency, great opportunities for the future. I think it's a good idea. Great idea. Okay, there's a motion and a second. Any final comments or questions from council on item 3140? Seeing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Lamore,
Yes.
Felder,
Yes.
Whitman,
Yes.
Michael
Yes.
Vining,
Yes.
Mayor Clark.
Yes. Clerk, next item. please.
The next item is the consent agenda, and for item B, approval of payments, the amount should read $1,627,945.46, 1,627,945.46.
Thank you. Are there any items on the consent agenda that council wishes to have pulled for further discussion? Any?
Your Honor, 3139.
Okay. Other items on the consent agenda council wishes to have pulled for further discussion? Seeing none. Any of those present this evening, any items on the consent agenda that wish to have pulled for further discussion?
See no hands.
I see no hands. So with that, a motion be in order.
Your Honor,
Councilman Felder,
I'd make a motion that all items on the consent agenda not pulled for further discussion be accepted, placed on file, recommendations carried out, and resolutions adopted.
Second.
motion by Councilman Felder, supported by Councilman Lamore, all items on the consent agenda except one pulled for further discussion be accepted, placed on file, recommendations carried out, and resolutions adopted. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Lamore,
Yes.
Felder,
Yes.
Whitman,
Yes.
Michael
Yes.
Vining,
Yes.
Mayor Clark.
Yes.
The next item would be item 3139, agreement with University of Michigan Dearborn Archaeological Research Program.
Councilman Michael.
Thanks, Your Honor. A question to Vince or Mark. I read through the agreement. There's nothing in there that has any does not have a fee or a stipend attached to it. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. This is just a partnership with the field class, the same as we did a couple years ago. Nobody's getting paid for this work.
Okay. So I guess my suggestion is, I mean, I was in college and I was used graciously to do all kinds of work for communities at no expense. My thought was, since this is starting in the fall and going till December, and it's somewhat inclement weather, and we got students out there, I was wondering if the council would want to provide like a stipend for two things. One, to allow them obviously to use the visitor center. We have to get with the foundation so they could use the restroom facilities. And secondly, if we provided a stipend when they were working in the field, that the stipend would go to the primarily to buy them something to drink and maybe something to eat, because they're going to be working out there all day. To me, it was just something goodwill, recognizing that the students were going to be out there providing a service to the city of Monroe, and in turn, we were going to make sure that they had something to drink and they had something to eat, and we could do it through the visitor center.
I'll see. I have a question follow up to that, Councilman. Mr. Cochran, in respect to, is that something that the university has in a support with them or not? Do we
Well,
know?
I think, Your Honor, we could probably come up with something,
Okay.
you know, in the form of a stipend or some sort of recognition reward for the work that they're providing that benefits the city. It'll probably be somewhat nominal, but at the same time, it does, it'll, you know, provide them something for being there.
Yeah, I think that I think that's a good idea. I think that, you know, I don't know how many students there are and then it's not like they're here every day, I don't believe, but when they are it's great work that got done last time. And I think it's beneficial to the development of our community and development around the national park, our corridor plan. And I think that if we just add in there that the administration be review for, I'll just say what would be a comparable stipend for meals, a meal allowance or something, I think would be sufficient for me. Councilman Calendly, your thought?
Yeah, that's fine, Your Honor.
Okay. All right. There's no other discussion on that. I think we can leave that to the administration. I think there's a fund, or so we could probably find that within one of the administrative funds, maybe the mayor's. Well, you know, well, I think it could fit. And quite honestly, it's about you know, the opportunities that's with what's allowable in there. So we'll see. Councilwoman Vining, you have a question? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was gonna pull this item as well. I just had a question. Do you know, Mark, maybe if they work with any of our students here locally on any of this? I always get nervous about digging, especially because we have such a rich history here. But the memorandum of understanding was really complete about how they handle that. But do you know if they work with any of our local students?
They don't currently, but that's something that we've talked about, is having a field class established, more just not just semester by semester, but on an ongoing basis. It would allow the public to also come and not participate, but observe and see how the work is done, and make sure that we're protecting these assets and have more community engagement as a component in the future. Right now, due to COVID, we're hoping that this actually happens this fall, but it's not guaranteed. But that's something we would like to look at into the future.
I definitely love to bring some students over to check it out. So hopefully we'll be able to do it. Hopefully they'll be able to do it this season and we can bring a group of students over.
Councilman,
Oh, I'm sorry, Mayor.
Oh, go ahead, Mark. Go ahead.
That's something we can discuss with them this fall too, is if, you know, they're down every Friday during the semester. And so if there's maybe 1 or 2 days that we can set aside or offer that even this fall, that's something we can discuss with them.
Councilman, I think it's a great idea. I know within the MOU, it says how the public can view, it's not participate, but to think that opportunity to speak to some of the youth in our community, you never know, as I say, when it sparks them of an interest of what they'd want to do and get involved with as a potential career, and to see what that means to their community where they live. So if we could work on that, Mark, and I think of, the schools, but also MCOP through the summer. I think the Opportunity Center, I should say, where our students are at, I think would be some possibilities. Mark, go ahead.
Yeah, just one more thing to touch on what Councilwoman Vining indicated, that, the memorandum of understanding is very thorough in terms of their processes and procedures, but we also get another separate document that's a whole research instrument that talks about exactly why they choose the sites they do, how they go about it, and that is very thorough as well. And we're still trying to narrow down which sites they may be working on this fall too. If you'd like to see that, I can provide it.
Excellent. Well, Councilman Calendly, you raised it with
Yes, Your Honor, I'll make the motion that we approve the memorandum of agreement with the University of Michigan Dearborn for archaeological research in the River Raisin Heritage Corridor, and authorize the city administration to sign the appropriate documents.
Second.
I heard a couple there. So the motion by Councilman Calendly, supported by Councilman Lamore. And on item 3139, the agreement with the University of Michigan Dearborn Archaeological Research Program with the amendment stated. Clerk, please call the roll.
I wanted to mention that Mr. Mika has his hand up. I'm not sure if it's related to it or if you, I just wanted to bring it to your attention.
Okay, well, before we vote, I see his hand raised there. Mr. Mika, did you have a comment on that? Your name, please, and residency?
Jeannie Mika, Monroe, Michigan, Elm Avenue. Just curious, perhaps it would be wise to invite the Archaeology Society to be of assistance in this dig. We've done a lot with the battlefield and other national digs as well. It's the Michigan Archaeological Society River Raisin chapter. And the president and the officers are all around here. You could be Tom LaDuke and see, I think he's in Carlton.
Okay. Thank you, Mrs. Mika. I think it's kind of, and Mark may follow up with this, but we can follow up with that as we look through that. I think there's some stipulations within the agreement on participation and not. So, but we'll get back with that. So there's a motion and a second. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Lamore,
Yes.
Felder,
Yes.
Whitman,
Yes.
Mike Angeli,
Yes.
Vining,
Yes.
Mayor Clark.
Yes.
All right, I have no further items, Your Honor.
Thank you. It is May. So Councilman Lamore, comments this evening.
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. I want to apologize to City Council for my mistake in my calendar of events there for this upcoming Saturday. And thank you for coming in early this upcoming Saturday for the meeting. I appreciate that. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Felder.
No items this evening, Your Honor. Thank you.
Councilwoman Whitman.
Yes, Your Honor. I just wanted to mention that I have, people know that I mentioned the bathrooms when, they were closed. So several people have mentioned to me about how clean the bathrooms are, and they have made a suggestion. They're asking if during the winter we could consider leaving the veterans bathrooms open, just the one, because it is at the beginning and the end of people walking. And even in the winter months, that's where parents go with their children. So I just thought I would bring it up for consideration, and that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Michael Angeli.
Yeah, Your Honor, I've got 15 things to go over. I'm just kidding. First one is I've gotten a couple phone calls from residents, and I think we've all probably experienced this, that the Front and Elm Street railroad crossings are really bad. I mean, they're really bad. And so I'm asking the city administration to reach out to the appropriate agency, railroad, whoever the representative is, and see if we can't get those fixed. The Elm Street one is probably worse than Front, but Front is showing a lot of decline as well, almost on a weekly basis.
Well, Councilman, there may be an answer. I see Mr. Lewis is on. He's got his hand up. I know that there was a contact a week or so ago. I think one of the council members made a comment they were going to do it at the same time. So, Mr. Pastu, if
No, I was going to suggest that Mr. Lewis, I know, has been in contact with proposed projects for improving those rail crossings. If I may just have Patrick provide the update.
Sure, if we can get an update now, see where we're at, and then Councilman, see where we maybe still need to go with them. Mr. Lewis.
Yes, thank you, Honorable Mayor and Council. Patrick Lewis, Director of Engineering and Public Services. Yeah, I want to jump in because actually there has been some movement on this front. I'm still trying to get confirmation, but my impression from what I was told, they were scheduling doing crossings all throughout the county, working with the Road Commission. I think I may have reported that 2 weeks ago, but they said that they were postponing the Elm and Front jobs until later this summer because they called them, quote, panel jobs. I'm encouraged by the fact that that may be the more permanent solid piece panels rather than just what I'll say is our normal partial repairs where they just kind of get in there, fix the rubbers and cold patch. So the good news is it sounds like it's going to be more complete repair than the other crossings in the county are getting. The bad news is we're going to have to wait another few months for it. So that's the update I have right now.
Thanks, Patrick. They might need to stabilize something along the way, but we'll just keep track of that as for the council members that have raised this, so we don't have some real problems with vehicles.
Yeah.
Council Michael Angeli.
Yeah, Your Honor, my last item is I happened to go over and take a look again at Labor Park, and I noticed that they are working on it. But I also noticed it looks like there's still quite a bit of work to be done. Can we get an update from Mr. Pasteur or the city engineer relative to what the anticipated completion date is?
Sure. Mr. Pasteur.
Yeah, Mr. Lewis and I talked about that this morning. He gave me an update where we were. So, Patrick?
Yes, again, the Labor Park project, they were waiting for cutting some more sod. Apparently they couldn't cut any more sod until tomorrow. So they got about half the park done with that. They were working on the water feature. I think they had to adjust one nozzle, but it should be getting close, getting that corrected. I know tomorrow, I think they're finishing up the electrical, the lighting for the flagpoles. And they do expect the rest of the sod to come in tomorrow. So I'm scheduling with the landscape architect, Mark Russell, to come and do a final punch list walkthrough middle to late this week so we can identify any remaining minor items. So that's where we stand, and apologies for the delays on that one. They've been trying to get in there for a couple of weeks here. We've had enough rain and the site's fairly poorly drained. We've had to push that back a couple of times, but that's where we are right now.
Your Honor, I think Vince has a comment.
Oh, I'm sorry, I missed that. Mr. Pasteur.
You know, Patrick and I both, it for all intents and purposes is going to be, I mean, there's already kids out playing on the playground and what have you that, but the question is, do we want to do any kind of, you know, ribbon cutting or any kind of event dedicating the park or not? I know the pandemic has been a consideration, but, you know, give some thought to it. It is ready to probably go, as Patrick said, possibly by the end of the week. And so.
Well, I guess it's something we can ponder as a council. Councilwoman Vining also, if you have some thoughts, please send them on to Mr. Pasteur, and it might be something that we just, even as the national park just have a soft opening, you know, just to get that opportunity to let the community know that it is open and functional, and see what we can do there. That'd be great.
That's all I have, Your Honor.
Okay, thanks, Councilman. Councilman Vining.
Yeah, so continuing with Labor Park. Yeah, excuse me. Yeah, it's going painfully slow, but I have seen the gentleman out there working. And so in my mind, for some reason, I was thinking that the splash pad was going to have all these, I hate to call them doodads, contraptions where the, you know, colorful things, where the rain, the water falls down and everything. But can you clear this up for me, Patrick? Is this just going to be water squirting up from the ground? And if so, is there contingency to get the doodads, or are we too late? Because I was kind of disappointed. I thought, you know, especially when I saw Milan, not to compare cities, but when I saw their new water park, you know, it has all the beautiful little, I said I was going to find the correct name so I didn't have to say thingamajigs or whatever. But you know what I'm talking about, Patrick?
So features, but
features, water features, yes. Are those not going to be at the splash pad?
I believe, well, and I was not heavily involved in the direct design for that. That was something that I know the landscape architect worked on. I think that was even part of the visioning there. I think we were targeting something relatively simplistic. So yeah, there aren't a whole lot of features there. It's designed to just be kind of a passive, I guess I'd say cooling item. But yeah, and I do think it's probably too late, because I think it would have to be a wholesale redesign on what we've got there. But I'll check with Mr. Russell when we have our walkthrough and see if he has any thoughts on whether any modest improvements were possible. I know that the project itself doesn't have a lot of contingency in it. We were kind of scraping to get the funding for it in totality. So we'd really have to take a look at the project budget at this point if it were feasible. I have a suspicion it's not. But we can talk offline a little bit. Maybe I'll review those with Mark later this week.
I think at the Father Carnes, which I think has a water feature included, we should probably be a little bit more creative in that aspect. But I think it's coming along a little slow for my liking. And even if like some general cleaning, there's a lot of like huge rocks and broken up concrete and sticks and things still laying around. But there's a lot of children there. We did our first phase of the Selma Rankins Community Garden Prep, and we'll be back this Saturday morning to actually begin planting. So we are going to have some kind of soft opening just so people can walk through and check out the garden. I believe, well, actually, I don't have a date yet, but it might be Saturday, the 29th. But I'm not sure because that's Memorial Day weekend and a lot of people will be gone. But yeah, we're excited and it's full of families. When it's warm outside, that park is full all day. I rode past there on the way to the meeting and to this meeting, and it was packed. So I think it'll get a lot of use, and just excited about generally all of the development going on throughout the city, and really anticipating digging deeper into the Orchard East sub area plan. So I think we're doing a lot of good work and I'm excited about it. I hope that the people see that we do more than just studies. So happy with the progress. Thank you. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thanks, Councilwoman.
And I'm sorry, Your Honor.
Go ahead.
I spoke about the Neighborhood Watch Program. I'm working with a couple of the churches, Oaks of Righteousness and Second Baptist Church, as well as Chief McCormick and Captain Tolstead have taken a lead, and Jody Egan helping us craft some verbiage to put out to the public. But we'll have some information coming up really soon on the Neighborhood Watch Program that we're starting in the 3 South voting precinct with this program. But my hope is that it can expand eventually citywide. It's an exciting program and everyone will be hearing about it via press releases and on our city website coming really soon. So I don't know if the chief wants to say more, but I'll say information is coming really soon. So I'm excited about that and appreciate the city staff for working with us on that. Thanks, Your Honor.
Thanks, Councilwoman. Maybe when it comes forward, it'd be great to, as a community message, and maybe unify some of the other smaller community watch locations throughout the community, but really unify the response and be united in our support here in the community. I know what you're talking about on those features. You're talking about like those water buckets with the holes in it and stuff. Those water features. I like doodads is good too. Councilman Michael, did you have a follow-up comment?
I did, Your Honor. I think it was relative to the water features. I think the water pad that's there is going to have spray jets in it that come out of the ground, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
It doesn't take much water to get kids excited, so I think they'll be happy with what's going on.
Yeah.
No, my grandson got soaking wet the other day when the landscapers were testing it without my permission, let me add. But the kids were out there when they were testing it. And yeah, you would have thought they had a 10-foot deep in-ground swimming pool. They were so excited.
That's wonderful. So I have just a brief comment. It's a really follow-up to Councilwoman Whitman on the Veterans Park. I did receive a phone call as well from a non-resident, but a person that spends much time within our city and was commending the city staff and the condition of the restrooms at Veteran Park, how clean they were, how well maintained they were. And they said anybody could be coming into the city and stopping there and utilizing the service there would have been very impressed. So I want to pass that along, I guess, of Mr. Pastu, but also for our staff and our city staff to make sure it's clean. I see them working through the week and on the weekends, and they're doing a wonderful job. So from all of us here at council, I know we send our gratitude for the great work they're doing, and to hear these compliments that are coming in shows that we're in the right place doing the right things. So that's the only comment I'm going to have this evening. Clerk Treasurer Lavoie.
I just wanted to remind people that the clerk treasurer's office is open 8:30 to 4:30 for counter service because the city taxes have gone out. It seems that most everyone has received them that should. We haven't really received too many calls, but it's just a reminder that if you don't receive it in the mail, it doesn't remove the obligation to pay those taxes. So if you feel that you haven't received a bill and that you should have, please call the clerk treasurer's office. We can help you now much more easily than we can after the June 30th deadline. So please give us a call now so we can get you what you need to make sure that bill is paid.
Thank you, Clerk.
All I have.
Mr. Pastou.
Two items quickly, Your Honor. First, Mr. Sell let us know that we received our first installment from the federal government for the American Recovery Plan Act, a little over what 5.7 million, I believe, came in today. So that still means that we're going to have to talk further as staff begins to understand better what those funds can be utilized for. We did get some interim final guidelines from the U.S. Department of Treasury last week. And I think just staff-wise, we need to dig a little deeper into the flexibility, if any, that we have related to those uses. But that will be a significant discussion with council, how we would plan on using that. So the other part of it is, the other thing is just, again, coming from the feds is last Thursday regarding the CDC guidelines related to wearing masks for those that have been vaccinated. Interestingly enough, the Michigan MIOSHA has not changed their policy regarding the requiring of masks for employees. And so I'll be sharing that with employees until we get something from MIOSHA that we're still going to maintain our wearing of masks in the office, even if you've been vaccinated. But it also ties in the fact that, we've opened up a little bit. When I sent the update last Thursday to you, it was preceding by hours the CDC guidelines. But, part of it is there's still going to be a reluctance on our part from the administration to have any large events that lead to congregation. And part of the rationale is right now we're somewhere between 55 and 60% vaccinated. We have had special events in the past that may have had as many as 5,000 to 8,000 people. Do the math. You can have several thousand people that are not vaccinated. And what we don't want as a city to potentially have a super spreader event that we've organized. So we're still playing very cautious with that. Maybe as the vaccination rates come back, that will come up more significantly. We'll, give that some consideration maybe later in the summer. That's all I have, Your Honor.
Thank you, Mr. Pastou. Next item is citizens' comments. So at this time, if there's comments from those that are present here this evening, mindful of the rules of the chamber or our Zoom meeting here of 3 minutes, but also that you state your name and jurisdiction of residence. Any comments from those present here this evening? I see no hands raised. Clerk? Oh, one.
I see one. Oh, I see
Okay.
several. So
I
I'll
see
just go in order that I saw them come up.
Sounds good.
Okay. Okay, there's the first one.
Graham,
Monroe,
yes,
Michigan.
Go ahead, please. I'm sorry.
Honors. Just wanted to talk about something we missed because talking about something else last city council. May 5th is a National Awareness Day for missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls. It was nationally proclaimed this year, and I'm calling in tonight to ask City Council to consider officially proclaiming next May 5th and here on out that day for the city of Monroe. Most people don't realize, but Indigenous women are murdered at a rate of 6 to 10 times the national murder rate. If they're between the ages of 0 to 35 or 1 to 35, it's the third leading cause of death, murder for them. And so these acts of violence against Indigenous people are perpetuated by the dehumanization and over-sexualization of Indigenous women. And I just thought it might be a good idea for the city to potentially raise awareness against that. That's all I have. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Graham. Clerk, next person, please.
All right. Okay. All right, there you go.
Cole.
Hi, Colbean, City of Monroe. So for tonight, I thought I would start with a quote from a good book I grew up learning and reading. So I'm going to read one line from 1 Corinthians 13, 4-6, which says, "Love is patient, love is kind, it is not envious, love does not brag, it is not puffed up, it is not rude, it is not self-serving, it is not easily angered or resentful. It is not glad about injustice, but rejoices in the truth." And when I consider the Custer statue and its accompanying signage, I cannot help but think of the truth which has been long obscured in favor of a more palatable story, one that many here in our city cling to as the foundation of its appeal. But this foundation is cracked and it metaphorically will crumble. It is built on half-truths and misplaced pride. Monroe's love of this statue, some might say, borders on idolatry, the extreme admiration, love, or reverence for something or someone. And this city is so much more than a statue that honors a man who committed genocide. We are more than a people who glorify a past that is still painful for many people who live today. And so I ask on the statue topic, as always, that when the time comes, you show strong moral courage, the courage to take action for moral reasons, despite a risk of adverse consequences. I ask that you make Monroe's foundation one that we can all proudly stand on, ironclad and full of hope for the future. In Jonah 2:8, it says, "Those who cling to worthless idols turn away from God's love for them." And on a different topic, I would also like to encourage everyone to read up on the escalation of violence that's been happening by Israeli armed forces against Palestinian people in these last 2 weeks. If you can take a moment to donate or support an organization like Doctors Without Borders or another organization of your choice to support families being torn apart and displaced from their homes, that would be great. I think genocide, no matter where it happens, is wrong. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, Cole. Clerk, next person.
All right.
TJ, your name, please, and jurisdiction of residence, please.
Yes, thank you. My name is TJ Stevens II. I do live in Sault Ste. Marie, but I drive through all the time. I drive through Monroe. I'm a citizen of the Sault Ste. Marie tribe of Chippewa Indians, and like I said, I travel between Michigan and Ohio quite often. I'm also the vice chair of the Anishinaabe caucus of the Michigan Democratic Party as well. Yeah, I travel through Michigan and Ohio quite often on business and have stopped in the city of Monroe in the past. And I remember it to be a beautiful city. However, I now make it a point to bypass Monroe altogether. Unfortunately, the city has placed George Custer upon a pedestal and showcases him as a hero without acknowledging the controversies surrounding his legacy. Custer barely graduated last in his class at West Point with 726 demerits to his name. His total disregard for authority continued throughout his military career, even bringing him to court-martial. A highlight of his military career is his role in stopping Confederate General J.E.B. Stuart at the Battle of Gettysburg, where he lost more than 250 men of the Michigan Cavalry Brigade. If anyone should have a statue in your square, it should be those soldiers of the Michigan Cavalry Brigade, not the man who led them to their death. Custer was also a known publicity hound in life and continues to be 144 years later with this. And following the Civil War, he wrote himself into history as America's premier Indian fighter, with a collection of letters, newspaper articles, and journals boasting his talents. Custer claims to have killed many Cheyenne warriors during the Battle of Washita, Kansas. In truth, those numbers included the execution of Cheyenne women and children. Some believe the removal of the Custer Monument is an attempt to erase history. That's simply not true, because Custer has already been written into the history books. He doesn't need to be idolized with a monument. Therefore, I urge you to remove the Custer Monument from the city of Monroe. And I thank you for your time. Miigwech.
TJ? Clerk, I see no other hands.
I see
Oh.
several more hands, sir.
Oh, they're coming up.
They're
Okay,
coming up. So I'll just keep going in order.
fair enough.
Okay.
Mr. Judy, name and jurisdiction of your residence.
Greg Drudy, Monroe, Michigan. Your Honor, I have a question. I think it's regarding zoning. I was talking to a neighbor who lives in my subdivision, who moved in somewhat after I did, and we were having a cordial discussion about the neighborhood. And if I'm incorrect, please point this out. He advised me that the Frenchman's Bend subdivision, you enter the subdivision through Avenue de Lafayette. It essentially makes an eyebrow turn, curves around, and makes a hard right, then a hard left, and continues due north. And that at that property was zoned for development, residential development. And when we go out there now, we are of the understanding that a private residence is to be constructed there. So if I'm incorrect, please let me know that. And I was just wondering how this came about and if the city is losing potential revenue from continuing the development as a subdivision.
Well, Mr. Judy, I'll have Mr. Pastu will get with you regarding that. There's a response. Mr. Pastu, if you have any brief comment now, but
for the last several years, there has been some ongoing discussion with the individual that owns property just there by St. Anne Court. And so there hasn't been a building permit issued, but they have looked to create a development. And candidly, I almost was thinking about something that both Mr. Green, our community development director, and also with Mr. Lewis actually mentioned, looking at whether we should contemplate doing a PUD zoning for that area so that we don't have this type of individual type of residential units popping in there. We also have received some inquiry also with, I believe, St. Antoinette as well at the end of that block as well. So it is rezoned residential and certainly complies with the existing zoning, although there has not been a building permit issued at this time.
thank you, Mr. Pastu. Clerk, I think there's one more hand up.
There is.
Nathaniel, your name, please, and jurisdiction of residence.
Yes, Nat Spur. I'm a member of the Nottawazippy Huron Band of the Potawatomi. My jurisdictional residence is Athens Township, Michigan. I live on the Pine Creek Indian Reservation. The one thing I wanted to point out is, we've gone through the racial relationship between our tribe and the Potawatomi Nation and the Anishinaabeg people of Michigan. Whether you want to call us American Indians or Native Americans or indigenous people, that's one thing. But the thing that I think, that I've mentioned in the last meeting 2 weeks ago was that, our tribe and other Native tribes to Michigan signed nearly 400 treaties with either the state government of Michigan or the federal government. And that's something that remains today. We have our tribe specifically has an extremely good relationship with the federal government, the state of Michigan, Calhoun County, and even the neighboring counties of our tribe in Brant, St. Joseph, and Kalamazoo, and Kent County, where we currently own property as well. We have a really good relationship with the village and township of Athens, where I currently serve on a wind energy subcommittee for future wind turbines and wind energy development. But on top of that, we either have had in the past or we currently have public safety contracts and or cross deputization agreements with law enforcement agencies from Emmett Charter Township, where our largest business is located, the Village of Athens, and of course Calhoun County, and now Branch County. So I mean, which is south of our reservation. So I mean, it's one thing that's come up about the racial relationship, but we see this as a government to government relationship because all this is based on treaties that we signed with either the state of Michigan or the federal government. And one person that I spoke to about this is a former very conservative Republican Attorney General of Michigan, Mike Cox, who I don't know very well, but I've met him several times. And he even pointed out that what the Potawatomi tribe and all the indigenous people that are native to Michigan have with the state government is the government to government relationship. And it was something that he cited when he both wrote and filed an amicus brief related to the Indian tuition waiver back in 2007 with the state government about why Indians, our treaty rights should be observed when it comes to people trying to gain higher education through state public universities. So this is something that I think has been overlooked, and it's why I think it's important that all of us, we've gone about this. We've always had a good relationship with other state, local, municipal governments and county governments, and that's what we've done here. So I think that should be observed and that should be noted as well. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and the City Council, for allowing me to speak.
Thank you, Nathaniel. Clerk Treasurer?
I see no other hands raised.
Nor do I. Need a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion by Councilman Lamore, supported by Councilman Felder to adjourn. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Lamore?
Yes.
Felder?
Yes.
Whitman?
Yes.
Iko Angeli?
Yes.
Vining?
Yes.
Mayor Clark?
Yes. Thank you all and have a wonderful evening. See you
Good
soon.
night.